With some banger cards on the way, I thought it was time to count down the top 10 best main events of the last 5 years. The list starts with UFC 234 and goes all the way up to UFC 304. So coming in at number 10, we have Conor vs. Dustin 2. Now, Conor vs. Dustin 2 had one of the craziest build-ups we've ever seen, with it starting as a charity boxing match, to Conor retiring a couple times in there, to Conor vs. Manny Pacquiao, to a respectful Conor in the build-up with the press conference, to then the actual fight, which was pretty interesting because everyone turned into a boxing and MMA expert with boxing stance. Conor, he's so susceptible to the low leg kicks that Conor has fallen behind the game. Look at him, he's not able to keep up, to Dustin putting it on him. And honestly, we were pretty right, because if he didn't come out with such a heavy stance, he might have had a better chance of winning that fight, because he was doing everything right except defending those low leg kicks. But hey, at least with thousands of fucking breakdown videos, we can now all confidently say that we are MMA striking experts. So before we head on over to number 9, I think it's a good time to note that this will be a mix of both how the fights deliver as well as the build-up. For example, Conor vs. Dustin 3, although the build-up was insane, it is not on this list because the fight obviously was not that great. So heading on over to number 9 is Islam Volk 1. Now, this may come as a surprise to some of you, and maybe there's some Volk bias in here from me, but everyone knew that going into this fight, there was a chance that Volk was going to go in there and get absolutely smashed. And by all means, you could argue that Islam should have smashed him. And the thing is, most of us thought Volk won the fight. When you watch it back, you can kind of see if you value control time over damage, Islam won, and then vice versa if you value damage over control time. But Volk really had the only crazy moment in that fight in round 5. And of course, that being in Australia, it's going to be really exciting. And the build-up was cool too, because Volk was at such a high, and Islam was getting his aura around him too, that no one really knew how the fight was going to go. And then of course, once it started, it was like, oh, we got a real challenge on our hands, which made them call Volk in, and we got our hearts broken when he got head kicked into oblivion in the rematch. So let's jump on over to number 8, which is Daniel Cormier Stipe 2. This is probably the oldest fight on this list, and maybe there's some name bias in here for me putting it in the top 10 best main events. I think this will probably be my most controversial pick, but I thought the fight itself was really exciting, and especially when you look back on history, you're like, damn, DC and Stipe in there. But DC not adapting to body strike throughout his career, it's really interesting that no one put 2 and 2 together throughout his entire run, that he was susceptible to the body, and Stipe just unloading on him. And I mean unloading, like unleashing the clip to a ridiculous degree on body strikes. I felt there was drama in this fight too, because DC was winning, and that was an insane comeback from Stipe. He had to pull that out the hat. And honestly, when you look back on history, you could argue that DC gets shoved out a lot of best ever lists for really no reason. He really was that dude that lost to the greatest heavyweight of all time and the greatest of all time. But give the guy a break, he was double champion. So let's jump on over to number 7, which is Davison vs. Moreno 1. So there's some short notice drama in here, because Davison was the main event of the pay-per-view before. Then he stepped up again, was like, let's get to it, I want to fight Moreno, and it was way closer than anyone expected. This fight was an absolute barn burner of barn burners that we saw it 4 more times, and I still think you could say that the first one was the best one. Could probably make a whole video breaking down all 4 of their fights and ranking them, and I don't think anyone would ever complain if we saw a 5th fight between these two, because we are talking about insane striking, insane grappling exchanges. Build-ups are pretty calm. This was the main event where everyone kind of stepped back and was like, wait, these flyweights can really throw hands, because there was a huge issue with Mighty Mouse and Henry Cejudo, where they were running the division for a while and it wasn't the most exciting. And then these two were like, fuck that, we are coming in there to throw down, and it was a complete scrap. Before we jump to a controversial number 6, if you don't want Colby Covington to ever fight for a belt again, make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and let's get back to it. So moving on to number 6, and this is another weird-ish pick by me, and really leading into the build-up of it, but it's Jon Jones' return versus Cyril. So Jon Jones returning after 3 years was one of those things that no one really knew how it was going to go, because he kept on saying he was bulking, and then when all the pictures came out, he looked really fat. And honestly, you could argue he still is really fat. With everything surrounding Jon Jones, you never actually know how good he's going to look. I think one of the bad things about this is Cyril is such a good striker, and then he just got manhandled that quick to lose that fast. You could argue that Cyril being so bad is why this fight shouldn't be on the list, but you have to give credit where credit's due. Jon Jones did take him down and submit him in a minute and a half, which is insanely impressive. And of course, the build-up was super entertaining as well, because everyone knew that Jon and Francis really was the fight to make, and if Jon had come back to beat Francis, it would have been even crazier. And I don't want to be like Dana White here and start ranting about how great Jon Jones is, and Jon Jones is the greatest of all time, yada yada yada. but I don't think Jon Jones was going to go in there and do the same thing to Francis as he did Cyril. And it's Jon Jones. We were all excited. 3 years removed. He comes back. He wins. Can you really complain that much? And now we're getting to number 5. And just know, from this point forward, these fights are just beyond insane. We got Volk Ortega on here, and oh my goodness, this was a fight that made us all Volkanovski fans, because let's remember, we all hated this dude because he won a robbed decision against Max. And then after this, it was like, oh my god, the fucking Celtics coach showed his team this, so they got hyped up and got nerves of steel going into their fucking basketball match while Volk was getting strangled on the ground. I don't even know the logic in that, but it sounds hype because that fight, oh my goodness, dude, they're just like, oh my god. I could not believe my eyes. I don't know if I've ever been more starstruck than I was when I was watching Volk get out of that. I think everyone thought it was done. That was Ortega's move. Ortega had him, and then even when he got out and turned all purple and shit, he got caught again. And I was like, oh, this is really it. This has got to be the end this time. And once again, he got out of it and beat his ass. And it was just like, what is going on? Like, how has this happened? What have we done to deserve a fight in a round in a moment of this magnitude? So, moving on to number 4. I don't think this should be a surprise to anyone. Colby Usman won. Oh my, like, just, oh my god. Insane build-up. Obviously, you have Colby when he was actually good. And then everyone's like, whose wrestling is better? Who's the bigger size? Colby got stripped for no reason. Usman beat Tyron when no one was beating Tyron. There was a lot of question marks here. And it really did seem like it was about to be a really boring main event where they were just going to try and wrestle each other and one of them was going to be better than the other. That did not happen at all. They did not shoot once, but what we got was one of the craziest fights of all time, with Colby and Usman just throwing down, no regard for anything, just straight striking. And it was insane because they were both mediocre strikers till the big moment where Colby gets knocked down and shoots. That led to the end of the fight. And of course, Colby protested. Colby said he was good. And when you watch it back, you're like, yeah, no, that was a good stoppage. He always said that if he made it to the end, he would have won. And if you look at the scorecards, he wouldn't have, because he would have lost that round. I don't know why he says that, but it's Colby. Trying to find reason in madness is pointless. I don't think I need to go on and on about how fun it was, because let's be honest, we've all probably seen it multiple times, just like we all have number 3, which is Glover versus Yuri. And Glover versus Yuri is just, oh my god. Oh my god. You're talking about two people with low fight IQ and good chins, so you know it was going to be a good time. And that's exactly what it was. When you go back and watch it, you're like, Glover had that in the bag, and I don't know why he jumped guillotine, but he did. Even when he was grappling with him, he could have just stayed in one position, but he went for the finish and got finished. And then Yuri probably also could have won that fight if he didn't spam the fucking flying knee like he was playing UFC 5. And Yuri's masterful defensive blocking shots with his head is something that always makes you step back and realize just how good he is. This fight had a little bit of everything from grappling to striking, and it ended in a finish as well. It's pretty similar to Colby Usman now that I'm talking about it. And I think most people might have think this is at 1. But I think the drama of the other two is why I ultimately put them over. So with that being said, let's jump on over to number 2, which is Periera versus Izzy 2. This is probably the best storyline of the past like 10 years in the UFC, besides Conor Khabib, because for one, it was literally like an anime story. TJ made a banger video on this, but when you think about stories, it doesn't really get that much better than this. It really looked like Periera just stole all of Izzy's hype. All of the memes were awesome. All the documentary videos we've all watched on it have been insane. Shout out Lionel. I think he is one of the best Alex Pereira documentaries on YouTube. And then the actual fight itself with the first round, both of them looking bigger and both of them looking like they were going to get after it early, and that's exactly what happened. And Izzy made some of the same mistakes he did in the first fight in the second fight as well, absorbing a lot of low leg kicks. And then in the second round, it looked like Izzy was hurt bad, and it really did look like it was going to be the same thing as the first fight. Then Izzy was apparently playing possum and knocked him out cold. Seeing Alex go down like that just does not look right. It didn't look real in real time. Probably because there were two giants in there, but I think it was a moment where the whole MMA world just exploded. It felt like the first UFC moment that was on the level of a Conor McGregor moment, which was something you don't get often. It was just on another level, and it was one of those you had to be there moments in the UFC. Just like number 1, which is Leon Usman 2. You may be upset at this at 1. I don't know why, but the amount of motivational edits I've seen of this fight, if I didn't put it at 1, it would be a disservice to all of the Reels creators out there, because oh my god, you gotta pull it out the fire. What's wrong with you? And then the cross head kick, pound for pound headshot dead. Like, what are we talking about here, boys? For Leon to be down that bad, to knock him out in the 5th round, oh my goodness. If you enjoyed this video, why don't you check out this one on the top 10 most exciting fighters in the UFC right now, and make sure to leave a like, subscribe, and don't forget, we're just getting started, we're gonna stay consistent, and I'll see you in the next video.